Hi, everybody. Welcome to the second night of the Spring Rights Literary Festival. I am Robin Schwartz. I'm sorry, I'm distracted by Kathy's face. She's grinning at me. She's so happy. You're so happy.
You're entering the room. I'm excited.
I am the Program and Grant Director for the Community Arts Partnership of Tompkins County. This Spring Rights Literary Festival is just one of our programs and services that support Tompkins County arts and artists. Our website, if you want to check it out, is artspartner.org. I will put the link into the chat. And you've all looked at springrights.org because you had to go there to actually register for this event. But we have many more events going through the 29th. And then from December through March, we're doing writing workshops. I decided to separate out the writing workshops, partly because I couldn't fit, because we're doing events one at a time now. I just couldn't really fit them all in. But it just felt like a really nice idea to take this festival and spread it out through the year a little bit. So I have a co-host on the call. Kristen Reed is a student at Ithaca College and our Community Arts Partnership intern. If I disappear from the call because of my internet, she will take over. And I now want to thank our sponsors: Wegmans, Ithaca College, the Odyssey Bookstore on Green Street, M&T Bank, and the Ithaca Marriott have all sponsored, supported, given us money for this event. And we're very, very, very grateful to them, especially this year. This event is also supported by New York State Council on the Arts and Poets and Writers. If you would like to lend support to the Community Arts Partnership's annual fund, that would be absolutely amazing. Funds support everything we do for the community. And with our tiny staff of 2 people, I am 50% of the staff of the Community Arts Partnership. If you would like to donate to our annual fund, any amount is just amazing. And I'm going to put a PayPal link in the chat as soon as I finish talking. Couple of things: everyone is on mute throughout this event. When you're ready to do questions and answers, we will do that through through chat. And you can type a message anytime during this event. If you haven't used chat before, you can communicate with anybody or everyone. It's a great way to keep things moving and hear what each other was thinking throughout the event. So without further ado, I am going to turn this over to Barrett, and you can introduce your event.
Hi, gang. Before we get started, we wanted to just do a couple of things really quickly. First off, we wanted to thank Robin for putting all of this together. Let's give her a huge round of applause. Holy crap. If we could. Thank you so much. We so appreciate it.
I just want to also thank Jen Tennant, who I think is on the call.
Right.
It was the artistic director for this year's Spring Rights Festival.
Awesome.
Hi, Jen.
Hi, Jen. Tonight as well, since we know that some people are calling in, so what we'll do is we're going to have a presentation, kind of a slideshow that Kathy and Heather and I are going to talk freely from. But we know that some of the things that are going to be on there won't be immediately visible, obviously, if you're on an audio call. So we'll narrate some of that as we go through. At the end of the talk, we will have a huge free-for-all, no holds barred Q&A, so feel free. And like Robin was saying just a minute ago, we'll take those questions, since everyone is muted, we'll take those questions through chat at the very end. And also one other thing, because we might be going quickly, just because of the amount of time that we have between now and 8:45, all of the things that we're going to pop up here on the presentation will be available for you if you want us to send it to you over email. There'll be a document, a copy of the Prezi presentation itself, and we can give links as well if you'd like. So be sure to sign up for that at the end if you want to as well. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this, oh, and that's right, Robin said we're recording this event, and it'll be at springrights.org in about a week. So I'm going to share the screen over here with a Prezi that we're popping up and ready to run. Let's see here. There we go, and yay! All right. It's slowly loading. Okay. With this, I'll say that, our delightfully perverted title of this talk is Total Submission, Understanding the Kinks and Quirks of Literary Magazines. I'm going to introduce my two fellow awesome panelists, Kathryn Henion and Heather Bartlett, here in just a second. And I'll narrate that as well, and I'll turn that over to them too while we're talking through. Just really quickly, let me move this over to the side. Yay! All right, there we go. Okay, let me introduce them first and foremost. Heather Bartlett's recent work can be found in The Fiddlehead, Lambda Literary, Los Angeles Review, Ninth Letter, woo! Poet Lore, Rhino, and other journals. She's a professor of English and writing at SUNY Cortland, and she is the editor of Hoxie Gorge Review. We have her website there as well. Kathryn Henion's fiction has appeared in Saranac Review, Natural Bridge, Green Mountains Review, Confrontation, Briarcliff Review, among lots of others. Her story, The Faultless Sky, won first prize in Sequestrum Literary Magazine's 2017 New Writers Award for fiction and nonfiction. She earned her PhD in English from Binghamton University, shout out to Binghamton, where she was also the editor of the biannual literary magazine Harper Palette. She currently serves as associate fiction editor for the online journal of art and literature, Anomaly. She lives and works in Ithaca. And as for myself, I have a very similar bio. I am a former editor of Harper Palette as well, and I'm a current reader for Salamander Magazine, which is published out of Suffolk University. Each of our websites is there if you want to see more information about our work. We'll just put that out there. Okay, so starting with that, and I know I've just been taking over the conversation. I want to turn this over to my fellow panelists as well. What we're starting off with is just a free-for-all in terms of how to get into the literary magazine game. Kathy, Heather, why did you get into lit mags? For the first part.
Why did I get into this?
Yeah, why'd you get into lit mags?
Why was I like, lit mags are the jam?
Yeah.
I wanted to publish, and I wanted to share that space with so many writers that I admired. And I don't think anybody told me in the beginning how labor intensive it is to go about this. So I think that's why panels like this are so helpful. I hope that will be helpful today for people who want to get started with this.
Awesome. Kathy, how about you?
I would say the same. I was a graduate student at Binghamton and had been writing for a long time, but realized I needed to start submitting and publishing as part of that. And I was kind of terrified by it and thought, and Harper Palette was there as an option to learn to work at. And I thought, well, this is the best way to kind of understand something, is to see it from the inside. And it helped enormously with my confidence in sending things out, just to see where I stood in terms of the submissions that we were reading and coming in. And not everyone has that opportunity. So I just want to acknowledge that that's not an opportunity for everyone, but it was one that I having been through that, I would say it increased my confidence in my own writing. We saw a lot of things that people sent in that were drafty, right? And it's like, oh, you really need to polish. And so I just learned through the process of reading submissions and figuring out how we decided about submissions, what went through to the top, what wasn't right. The whole process just made a huge difference. So that's why I personally got into it. But I think, anybody just reading literary magazines, you can get a sense for what they're looking for. But we'll get into that later.
Same with me as well. I had the opportunity. I'd worked for several magazines before Harper Palette, and it gave me the chance to really look at, what could I do with my writing? I always wanted to write, and what the hell does one do with it? Well, one of the first places that writers can jump into it is literary magazines. To that end, Kathy and Heather and I are going to speak tonight both as writers and as editors and readers for literary magazines. So feel free to jump in with questions about that at the end as well. So before we do anything else with our writing, and when it comes to literary magazines, one of the best places to start is this kind of little checklist. We're going to talk about personal experience with each one of these areas, and we'll give some suggestions here at the bottom of this before you submit page on what to look for. So Kathy had mentioned this just a moment ago about reading widely, also in literary magazines too. Heather, I know you did this as well. Where did you all start off with, beginning with your readings when it came to figuring out like, where should I send my stuff? What should I do with this particular form or this poem or this short story? Where did you start off with?
I'll go first, Heather. Why not?
Go for it. Yeah.
I started off with print magazines, and so I should preface this by saying I got into this game around the 2004 mark. So that's a very different time than we're in now. It was actually harder. Not harder. It wasn't harder to get published. It was just harder to like get the landscape. There were fewer online magazines. And so it was kind of like you had to find a place that had a print journal and or subscribe to it and then have it sent to you. It was just a little more logistically difficult. And so I just started subscribing and also going to the library and looking at the journal shelves. Fortunately, we're in Ithaca. Like I literally walked up to Cornell and went into the library and found the literary journal section. And I think that the Tompkins County Public Library also has some. But I really just started reading and then asking around. And once I was reading, I would see, oh, this journal publishes this kind of work. I don't really write like that. So I know I'm not going to submit to that journal. Maybe it's more fantasy, like I write literary fiction. So I'm going to look for something that's more when's that to that genre. So really just getting a lay of the landscape and reading as much as I feel like it's a lot easier now because there's so many online journals and there's also these databases where you can get a sense for what different journals publish. I'm getting ahead of myself. Sorry, Barrett.
Oh, you're good. It's all good.
But you can find out in a paragraph or so whether you think your work might fit in a journal or not, and then build your spreadsheet or your database from there for where you might want to place your work.
Heather, how about you?
I had a similar, I think I started around the same time too. And I was in college and I was reading, and I started mostly with poetry, and I was reading a lot of poetry, and I became sort of obsessed with flipping in actual paper books to the acknowledgements pages of books that I loved. And so I'm jumping ahead too, I'm sorry. But then I would seek out the journals that poets would mention in their acknowledgements pages where they had been published before. And, so I'd seek them out, and then I'd find new authors that I liked and look them up and find them in other places. And it was harder. And it required a lot of, printing and self-addressed stamped envelopes and a whole lot of stuff that we don't have to bother with anymore.
Mail merge.
Mail merge, yeah.
But I would also turn to poets and writers. There also used to be a digest that would come out every year. Was it just the Writer's Digest?
Yeah, Writer's Digest, yeah.
Yeah, like the list, what Poets and Writers does for us now. But I would look up the calls for submissions. But I really started by, I love this poet. I really want to know more about their work, or I want to, I want to be like them. So I would seek out the journals that they were published in. And then, of course, there were some that I was familiar with in terms of, the ones that everybody's familiar with, the New Yorker, the Paris Review, and, continue to sort of strive for those types of things. But I think that I came mostly to literary journals by way of authors and poets that I really liked.
Awesome, thank you both. So you've got a manuscript, you've got a poem, you've got a story, you have an essay that you're wanting to send out. Starting with that, how do you know that it's ready to go? One of the best ways to do that is to find writing groups and join writing groups that you are beholden to in terms of producing, revising, and getting your manuscripts better, and also beta readers. Beta readers, quick definition for them is just someone who you trust implicitly to give you hardcore, no holds barred feedback when it comes to your writing and your work. These are people whose opinion you trust, and you trust them to give you honest feedback about your work. Kathy, I know you're a member of at least one writing group. Heather, are you as well?
Not in the same. I have my people, but it's more.
Gotcha, your people, yeah. Kathy, how about you?
Yeah, I have in the past had 2 writing groups. And right now it's really down to 1 just because pandemic.
Yeah, pandemic.
But I found it so helpful, and you can't, it's not like an easy thing to say, like, get a writing group. Like, it's so important, the people who are in your writing group, and that they're critical, but they're kind, but they're not worried to like tell you it like it is, kind of thing. So that's a really hard thing to find, and it's really special. So I feel really grateful. Again, in this community, we just have so many avid readers and writers and people who are kind and willing to give you their feedback. So we're really blessed in that respect. I also, one of my writing groups was a short fiction group only, and the other one was a mixed genre. And so that was actually really amazing to have people who were in other genres reading my work, because they brought different perspectives. So I would never underestimate the possibility of having a poet read your work if you're a fiction writer, and vice versa. There's just different skills that come into that, and it can kind of like blast you out of your your bubble, so to speak, to make things better, for sure.
Absolutely. That's awesome. Some of the places, like Heather was just talking about just a moment ago, finding out where your favorite authors have been published is a great way to, locate which markets are out there. We're going to go over a few of them here in just a moment as well. Places like New Pages, Poets and Writers, like was just mentioned a moment ago too. Duotrope, which is, it's unfortunately now a pay service. It didn't used to be, but it's a pay service now. But it's totally worth it. I swear it is. And then we'll talk about social media and places like the review, and we have a document for you all later if you want it. So let's go over those just really quickly.
Oh, Barrett, can I say something?
Yeah, of course. Sorry. Yeah.
I also wanted to not to say, like, have your friends, and if you feel safe,
yeah,
relatives read your work, because sometimes it's good to have those people who are not writers,
right,
readers, to be like, I don't get it.
I don't get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
If you can stand the I don't get it, then that can be really good. I was actually just reading today, like I might have been preparing for a panel or something. Anne Lamott in Bird by Bird, which is a book that I use for just all of life, has a chapter about why it's so important to find someone to read your work, and she says that it's basically like finding a partner. It's like a marriage. You have to find somebody who can be your friend and your critic at the same time. So it's actually really difficult to do. But when you find that person, you sort of know it, and it's like I think she says you're stepping into the shape that was waiting there for you all along. So it is a really important relationship to find.
It is essential. And as someone who has been part of a writing group where we've had to ghost or kick certain people out because they weren't, adhering to the rules of the game. Yeah, it's important to find these people. It's like you're auditioning friends. It's like you're auditioning people who are going to kick your ass. So it's a good find.
Reality.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Finding places where you can submit your work. One of the best resources out there is New Pages. We have several examples here. This is just a sample page from newpages.com. They have a wide variety of journals that are out there. They give listings for them as well, as you can see. They sometimes put up calls, they frequently put up calls for papers or calls for certain types of genres, whatever they're looking for, they'll let you know. It is a totally free website. It is glorious, and I can't believe it's free, but it is an amazing resource. Along those lines as well, another site, like we were just talking about a little bit ago, Poets and Writers. Poets and Writers is a fantastic site because they have so many tools that are available for our use. You can list yourself as an author on there, as someone who's published work before. They've got all kinds of fun stuff that is up and available for contemporary issues on the on matters of the genres and what's publishing and who's publishing and whatnot. They have all kinds of listings. This is just their compendium of literary magazines that are out there. And Poets and Writers is also free. It is a great free resource to use as well. For both of you, have you used New Pages or Poets and Writers before? These sources that what are your favorite sources to use, Kathy and Heather?
Those are two of my favorite sources to use. I would throw in there, Lambda Literary puts out calls for LGBTQ friendly publications and anthologies, so I check that out a lot too. And I follow Submittable on Twitter, which I find to be a really useful way to catch calls for submissions as well.
Yeah, I've heard Twitter is amazing. I'm kind of old school now. I guess I always have been. I find so much joy in getting the print subscription to Poets and Writers and going to the back and like using a pen and circling the things that I want to submit to. There's just something very comforting to me about that. But I used to use New Pages a lot when I first started submitting to build my submission spreadsheet, which now is pretty steady. I probably should update it. But I use Poets and Writers and Writers Chronicle, which is a publication of the Associated Writing Programs organization. There are so many places, but I think those are pretty good. Duotrope in Poets and Writers, the online components are amazing because you can sort by genre and other variables that make it easy to kind of like target in on what would be a good place for you to submit.
Absolutely. With Duotrope, I can speak from personal experience. I subscribe to Duotrope. It's a $50 a year membership. Once I realized that I was going to start being serious about this game, I started paying the fee for it each year because it serves as what Kathy was just saying. It serves as your spreadsheet if you wanted to, and it's a great place to hunt out lit mags that are out there and available, contests, anthologies that are up and running. They now have a service where if you are looking for an agent for a manuscript, they're starting to put those together pretty thoroughly. These are just sample pages from the site. Just kind of see what's out there. This is an example of the spreadsheet that they do. This is called their submission manager. And you can see kind of information like, here's where I sent it off. Here's when I'm supposed to hear back from them. Here's the journal, a link to the journal itself, things like that. Last but not least, these are one of the things that Duotrope is great about is hosting interviews with the editors for those magazines. So if you want in-depth knowledge as to what the editors are looking for at that time, they constantly go through cycles of interviewing editors to find out what they're wanting and what they're looking for.
Yeah, which is huge because when they change editors, they can change aesthetic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so that's really important. Somebody asked a question.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Since I'm manning Prezi, if there's anything, just let me know. Yeah. And like we were talking about earlier as well, some of the other places like the Review, which just like it says, it reviews literary magazines that have come out recently. It is a great spot for finding out what's out there as well, just to kind of see what's been featured, who's been featured there too. Twitter, I'm on Twitter as well. That's probably the majority of the people or the organizations that I follow are probably literary magazines, and they have lots of links to other sites and authors and things like that. Just like here, like Plowshare's page, for example. And this is a great resource that Heather, you turned us on to this, right?
Yes.
Yes, that's right. Do you want to speak about Lynn Barrett's What Editors Want?
Sure. It's a short text actually originally from the Review. And she basically lays out what the editor's job is and what the writer's job is so that you sort of know what's happening on both sides of that. And she points out that the editor's job, as much as the editor just really wants to find something that's going to be perfect for the journal, that's really hard to do because basically editors are tired and busy all the time. And that most of the work that the editors do is invisible. It's a lot more than just reading amazing submissions, as the three of us know. And she points out that the writer's job is to basically send in your best and most polished work to try and make it stand out from the pile. And she gives suggestions on things to include in your cover letters and how to think about approaching your submission. So it's a really good resource. It's short. It's helpful to think about and to look at.
Rosalind Tukolsky just asked, do any of these journals pay for content? And yes, lots of them do, actually. One of the best places to find out, again, Duotrope is a great spot because they list whether or not they are a paying market, or if they're a not paying market, they list them also by how much they pay. There are some really good resources out there in terms of, you know, which ones are paying versus not paying, which ones are electronic versus print. But yeah, places like New Pages, Duotrope, and Review are fantastic for it. Yeah. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Not because there aren't places that pay, but they're not in the majority, I would say, even
Right.
still. Most places don't pay because they can't pay, you know, because they're running on very little. You know, like Hoxie Gorge Review would love to be able to pay contributors, but we can't. So I think it's if you're getting into it in order to get paid, there are probably much better and easier ways to make money than submitting to literary journals. And sometimes you have to pay to submit to the journal.
Right. Oh, let's talk about that now. Actually, we just got a question about that. For both of you, what has been your experience since we've been doing this around, like, say, you know, the mid, you know, first decade of you know, the 2000s? How have submission fees changed, and you know, how has this kind of changed the game? How about that?
Well, I'll go first, Kathy. So
Yeah.
I can drink my wine. Thank you.
Get a beer break.
I think that a lot of places have started imposing a small, speaking as I submit poetry and short fiction and occasionally short nonfiction, have started imposing a small submission fee of like $3 per submission that helps the journal cover their costs. But a lot of them are still free. And that's just for standard journal entries, but it does start to add up when a lot of places are doing that. And, you know, I think one of the things we'll talk about at some point is when you submit, you should submit your work to many places. And at, you know, $3 a pop, it's easy for that to start sort of adding up. And usually you also have to pay when you submit to contests, which I think we'll talk about later a little bit as well. But submissions have changed a lot in that with things like Submittable, which I would say I don't know if it's wrong to say the vast majority of literary journals use Submittable as their submission service, which also keeps track of your submissions for you if you've submitted. Right. I completely forgot what I was going to say about that.
That's okay.
I'll jump in.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's usually between $2 and $4 is mostly usually. I've done a lot recently, so $3 a pop. Which the other reasoning I've heard is that it used to cost that to send it paper, right? Like, and it might be like $1.25 or something, but you know, the time that you spent getting the envelopes and sticking the stamps on and going to the post, I mean, it was so tedious. Like, that almost made the rejection even that much worse. So, I mean, to me, it's like, I feel like I'm supporting the journals. It's a little bit annoying, but actually the submission process is super smooth and fast, and that's like, do it and it's done. That being said, I know that, for example, Anomaly, which is the journal I read for now, if you just write to them and say like, this is not in my budget, like it's not, I can't afford to do this, like, but I really want to submit, that a lot of the journals will accept fees. So you just need to say like, look, I'm sending this by email or this other contact the editor if you feel comfortable, and just say like, I want to submit my work, but this is not in my situation to be able to pay for it. A lot of journals will allow that because they really want to get the best work they can. So they're gonna be open.
Yeah, a lot of them that do require you to pay for submissions will do that, or we'll have like a month-long period where they have free submissions. So
right, yes,
you can touch them during that time too.
I want to jump in and say there are magazines out there that will be exploitative when it comes to submission fees. Several of them are run as basically, you know, capitalistic corporations. For example, I'm going to call them out on this. Narrative Magazine. Narrative Magazine charges $25 a pop just to submit your work there. Don't do that in any way, shape, or form at all, just for the shot at...
If you feel dirty,
Yeah.
It probably is.
If you feel dirty, it probably, I want that tattooed on me somewhere. That is glorious. I love it. Oh, before we jump away from what editors want, at the end, when we ask for anyone who wants it, when we ask for your email address, if you would like us to send this to you, including the Prezi, there is also the document What Editors Want from Lynn Barrett that we will be able to distribute with it as well. So if you'd like that, just let us know. We promise not to send your emails anywhere. We swear. We're just going to give you information about this, about the panel tonight. We promise not to give it to Google or Facebook or anything else like that. We swear. We promise. Okay. Beyond that, so that's pretty much the prep work before you submit your work. You've got your document ready to rock and roll. It's been polished. It's been revised out the wazoo. You've talked to your beta readers. You've talked to your writing group. You have a document that's ready to send out. A short story, several poems, an essay. You are ready to rock and roll. What do you do now? Let's talk about submitting your work. Okay, this is especially going to test our knowledge on both sides as writers and also as editors and readers for magazines too. We're going to talk just a little bit here in a second about submission guidelines, how to prep cover letters, what submission clearinghouses like Submittable, like Heather was just mentioning a bit ago, and how you keep track of your work. Where do you send your stuff? So let's talk about that. Submission guidelines are very particular. We have the submission guidelines from Hoxie Gorge Review, from Anomaly, and from Salamander, the three places where we are each editors and readers. Heather, would you like to take away, the general submission guidelines from Hoxie Gorge Review?
Sure. I think our guidelines are pretty standard, right? We outline we're not reading for a particular theme. We're reading for quality and style. We want to be wowed. We especially welcome marginalized voices to submit. And then we just basically outlined that we love simultaneous submissions, as long as you let us know. One piece of fiction, one piece of nonfiction, or 3 to 5 poems per submission. And those details are pretty important when you're submitting, especially if you're a poet and you're submitting poetry. Each place has a little bit of a different guideline in terms of how many poems they'd like to see. But I think it's important to look at too, if the journal gives you some indication of what they like to read. Like we said, please send only 1 story or essay per reading period. We prefer shorter pieces. We are happy to read work of any length if it's amazing, but the shorter pieces are the ones that we tend to reach for. So if you have a piece that's 20 pages long, then Hoxie Gorge is probably not the place that you want to send that to. So paying attention to those little details are helpful too.
I want to echo that. It's really important to read the directions.
Kathy, I'll bump over to Anomalies as well.
There's so many submissions. It's overwhelming, and it's amazing. Like, it's so great that there's so many people writing and submitting, but it's like that, the same thing people say when you're applying for a job. If you screw something up in the cover letter, it's like immediately, or you didn't follow instructions, immediately a blank mark. I will say that I personally don't read the cover letters until I've read the piece, because I don't want to be swayed by that. But if I see something come in and it's very obviously 25 pages, I'm like, you didn't read the instructions, right? That's too long. So yeah, for Anomaly, we it's similar to Hoxie Gorge. We accept a bunch of different things: creative nonfiction, fiction, poetry, translations, and then we'd have folios that change. I remember one time I worked on a Romany folio, which was any type of writing artwork from the Romany peoples, which is incredible. So it's that's another thing I would say about journals, is check back with journals that you like and or see work that's similar to yours, because they often have thematic issues, and it's good to keep track of that, and see how your work resonates with some of the themes that come out. I'm trying to see if there's anything here. Make sure that you're submitting in the time frame when they're open for submissions. And Yeah, so here we say, if for reasons of financial hardship, you cannot afford to pay the submission, but just send us an email at the editor and send it that way. So that's what I was referring to, that not all magazines do that, but to be honest, I like those magazines because if they really want and are committed to diversity of voices, they're gonna offer that option.
Absolutely. I'll speak for Salamander really quickly. For the most part, Salamander asks for, similar things as most magazines do. We ask that each person only submit, if depending on the genre, one story or one essay, maybe a couple of flash fiction pieces or flash, CNF pieces at one time, several poems at one time as well. This is pretty much standard for most magazines. Something I will say as an editor as well is that, like Kathy was mentioning just a moment ago, we receive so many submissions. So many. We are looking honestly for any reason to not have to read through a submission. And one of those reasons is if it doesn't follow the submission guidelines. If we're looking for something that's not over 5,000 words, if we get a 25 page story, we know that that's automatically not going to be a fit. We will say, we'll give a very quick, form rejection letter, and we can move on with our day. I remember, being an editor with Harper Pallet, we would receive about, say, we asked at the time for 3 to 5 poems per, if you wanted to submit, maybe up to 3 to 5 poems per person. I remember one person sent in an envelope of 20 poems, and we looked at that and put it immediately into the recycling bin, because we could tell that this person did not care enough to read our submission guidelines, which meant that they were not invested in our magazine, and we would not want to be invested with them.
Yeah, I want to reiterate, it's not about being mean. It's literally about, please just, right. If you really want your work to be here, then please read the instructions.
Yeah.
Read the magazine too. Yeah.
Yeah. And I will say, I acknowledge it's hard to read all the magazines. Like, it's impossible. But you can go to their website and find out what they're about and kind of read the beginnings of a few things. You can get the gist of it that way. Or, obviously, if you can subscribe to a few journals, that's great. You're supporting. A lot of journals are not there. Most of them are nonprofit. So you are supporting the very places that want to publish you.
And Robin brings up a great point over in chat. It is very similar to grant writing. You have to follow those submission guidelines precisely if you want even a good shot at it. So it's a really good spot. Yeah. But yeah, make certain to read through the submission guidelines for each place that you want to submit to. It shows at least an investment on your part as to, maybe getting in. So that's great. Cover letters are another thing that some magazines don't require them, a lot do. Is it fair to say that the majority of them require a cover letter, or at least in some way, shape, or form?
I feel like it's half and half.
Yeah, it's like half. Yeah, I'd say that.
When you submit to Submittable, they usually just ask you for a bio.
Right. It's going, I don't know if it's going the way of the dodo or not, but yeah, it's a good way to show that you also have another investment with the magazine, to follow their guidelines with that. We have one from each of us, our sample cover letters. These are kind of boilerplates that we use. So we'll start off with Heather, and then Kathy, and then myself. How about this? This is a great one. Heather, would you mind, just kind of giving us a rundown of your general cover letter?
Sure. So this is my sort of standard cover letter. I'll say one of the things I usually just sort of copy and paste these into Submittable as is appropriate. I have one for poetry, I have one for fiction, I have one for nonfiction, I have one for book manuscripts, but I try to, hit a few key points, other places where I've been published, say something nice about their journal, let them know that it's a simultaneous submission. But the one thing that I do always make sure that I do is I look up the editors' names and I address the cover letter to the name of the editor. And, I don't know how effective and important that is, but it does demonstrate that I know where I'm submitting and that I'm invested in it. Because I think one of the things, being on the other side of that as a reader, as an editor, one of the things that can easily sort of turn you off from a submission is when someone clearly copied and pasted and put the wrong name, or, you know, I love Ninth Letter, and I'd be so happy to be published in your magazine. And, you know, like, great. I'm sure that Ninth Letter would be happy to publish you too, but we're not Ninth Letter. So, you know, just making sure that you think about that. I think it is a good idea to personalize your cover letters, but I don't, and maybe you guys will disagree, I don't think you need to sort of go overboard, because as you heard us say, cover letters are something that we usually read after we read the submission. So if the submission is, you know, really great, I'm going to want to read the cover letter. So.
Awesome. Kathy, how about you? Well, sorry, let's go to yours really quickly.
I do not personalize my letters, so good on you, Heather.
Just look up the editor's name, that's it.
I'm afraid that I will screw up, and like, even though I've looked up the name, I will misspell it, like type it wrong, something like that. So, and because I know that I read the cover letters personally after I've sent, like after I've read the submission, I just say, dear fiction editors. I do appreciate your attention to detail.
I like to tailor mine. I have my boilerplate, but then I like to tailor mine per the editor. So for example, Silas Hansen is an editor, a creative nonfiction, the creative nonfiction editor with Waxwing magazine. And this is one that I wrote for a piece that I was trying to submit there. The piece ultimately got accepted. I will not blame that or give credit to the fact that I was able to mention another work that was published in Waxwing at the time, but I do like to tailor it just a smidgen, just a little bit, just to show that I have a bit of investment in it. But yeah, this is kind of the boilerplate. Thanks for considering this. It's a simultaneous submission, hugs and kisses, your name, you know, things like that. But yeah, that's, again, as editors as well, we tend to focus on the content of the work first, and then if we want to, the cover letter. But yeah, it's all about the content.
It says thanks again, man.
Yeah, I was gonna say, this cover letter of yours is that it's so you know, like your voice is shining through in this cover letter. Whereas I feel like mine is like, I've been published here, here, and here, and I have a degree. So like, take me seriously. So
I hope that Silas is a man.
Silas is a dude. Yep, Silas is a dude. Yeah, absolutely. I also hope that. With regards to submission clearinghouses, this is, like we were talking about earlier, submittable, which is what, it's kind of the industry standard at this point. This is kind of what submittable is. It's a way for magazines to accept submissions. Previously, it was done, you know, through the mail. Places like Ziziva, you know, still do it through the mail. Are there other journals that accept solely through the mail that we remember?
Not that I remember, but it's very few. It's
very few of them. That is going the way of the dodo. But yeah, submittable is one of the spots where this happens. So submittable is a great spot for magazines to be able to collect submissions, and it's a way for them to disseminate quickly among their editors and their readers, you know, the works. There's ways for them to be able to say, all right, this looks promising, I want to send it along. This does not look promising, let's get another look at it and send it on its merry way. It's a way to get it to various readers pretty quickly. It's been around for a long time. And most magazines, I would say, use that, or you know, an embeddable software system called Submission Manager, which we'll talk about here in just a bit. This is just some sample pages from it. This is their just a look at, you know, your typical you know, page that you would see on Submittable of all the works maybe that you've sent out. There's ways to say this is currently being read by the magazine. This has recently been declined by the magazine. It just depends on what you want to show up in your feed. And just a moment ago, I was talking about Submission Manager. This was a product by a software developer named Devin Emke. He sells it for $250 a pop to whichever magazine wants the software for it, and is a great place to be able to you know, submit work and disseminate it to your readers in your magazine. So Missouri Review, for example, uses Submission Manager. We at Salamander also use Submission Manager, and it's a good way for just everybody to pop on with a log on and an ID and be able to look at the work that's out there. And it's also really quick. It's a very efficient way for people to look through submissions that come in. Okay. In terms of keeping track of your work, like we just talked about, one of the best places to do that is through Duotrope's, spreadsheets, their submission manager. And we have some examples here of spreadsheets. This is from our friend Angie Pelakidis. We're totally stealing hers that she had recently. It's a listing of her submissions, a general overview of what the submission was, when did it get sent out, how many pages it is, when she's supposed to hear back from it. And this, Kathy, is this yours? This is awesome. Yeah. Can you speak a bit about this?
Yeah, well, you've got, this isn't the whole spreadsheet because it's humongous. Right. You've got highlighted the accepted pieces, which this makes me feel nice. But you can see I've got at the top the names of the stories and the word count, and then all the dates are the dates that I've submitted those pieces to journals. So you can't see the names of the journals as far as this. So if you were to go further to the right, you would see all of the names of the journals. But this just gives me like a view of how many times have I submitted each of these. And then if it's highlighted in green, that means I got a nice rejection.
Woo!
All of those dates are rejections.
Yep. That's awesome.
Fortunately, they all got picked up, but one thing I wanted to, and we'll probably talk about this about rejections in a minute, but like on average, I get rejected at least 40 times before I get it picked up.
Yep.
So a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't be daunted by rejection at all.
No.
We'll talk about that too later on. Yeah. But
we should probably mention that it's so important to keep a spreadsheet. Mine's not up there because mine is a mess and it's not nearly as any of these. But I think it's important to keep a spreadsheet because of things like simultaneous submissions. We got a question in the chat about what about places that don't accept simultaneous submissions, and do you submit to them? I usually don't because I don't think it's very fair. No. But I think that the spreadsheets are really important so that you can keep track of, where you've sent your work, but also if it gets accepted somewhere and you have it out to 10 other places, then you have to be able to contact those places and withdraw your work from consideration, which you should always do if it gets picked up somewhere. So this just helps you keep track of that so that you can also be responsible with yourself.
On the simultaneous submission question, I would say, like, if you're willing to only have your piece sit with someone for up to 9 months to a year and a half, then go ahead. Like, they're the only ones looking at it for a year and a half of your life. If you want so much to be sent, then you should go for it. But I agree, I don't send to those because I don't think it's reasonable.
Yeah.
Same. Some of them might be worth it, but yeah, I tend not to send to places that are exclusive, that request exclusive looks.
A lot of times they are soliciting content anyway.
Right, exactly, yeah. So you're submitting your work, you know where to send it, you're writing your piece, you revise it, it's ready to rock and roll, you have your cover letter ready to rock, you have a bio. By the way, I wanted to mention something that we didn't talk about earlier. A lot of magazines love it when they are your first publication. I know that Aaron Birch, who runs Hobart Magazine, loves seeing especially people who send in work and this is their first acceptance from someplace. So don't ever feel bashful about not having previous publications. A lot of magazines actually strongly encourage first-time writers, first-time acceptances. They really do want to find these fresh new voices. So if you haven't submitted before, don't be afraid of not having publications I'm not mentioning publications if you don't have any when you send out your work at all in the slightest. So beyond that, let's talk a little bit about rejections and acceptances, okay? Like we were mentioning just a bit ago, Kathy, you have about 40 before, typically an acceptance comes in. I think I'm right around there as well, but know that rejections are inevitable. You are going to be rejected far more than you are accepted. And this is for every author we know. Let's talk about baseball stats. Let's do it. Heather, Kathy, how about yourselves? What's your usual before, before you start thinking, maybe I should do something else with this?
I don't know what my numbers are. That feels more like an emotional question that you're asking.
Go for it. Talk. Yeah.
I feel like, rejection is life when you are a writer and you're submitting your work. And it's, it's not always about, it's often not about how good the work is. It's about it just didn't get to the right place at the right time, you know, under the eyes of the right reader. But I get a lot, it feels like I get a lot of I deal with a lot of rejection in my life before I get an acceptance. I don't know what the numbers are, but the vast majority of the work that I send out goes through several rounds before it's accepted somewhere, and also will go through rounds of revision during that process as well. For me, that's often just because that's kind of, I'm always revising things even after I send them out. It's a terrible habit that I have, but I can't help it. You know, that's again why the spreadsheets are so important too. Early on when I started submitting, I didn't quite understand, and I submitted to a journal called Upstreet, and they sent me a very nice positive rejection saying they particularly liked one of the poems that I had sent them, which I took brand new to the game, took to mean that I should send it again. So I sent it like 2 more times, and then I got a rejection that said like, basically, please stop sending us this poem. You've sent it to us 3 times, which is how I learned that that doesn't necessarily mean that they want to see it again. But rejection is totally part of the game. What's thrilling is if you get a positive rejection, or you know, we liked this, or we'd love to see more work from you in the future. That's almost as exciting as an acceptance.
And we're going to show you some examples of that here in just a second. Kathy, did you want to speak more about you know, your stats when it comes to you know, acceptances versus rejections and things like that?
Not other than what I said before, which is this 35 to 40 submissions before I get accepted on average.
No, this is part. Yeah, sorry, Kathy, go ahead.
I'm in a drought right now, you guys. I'm gonna just get a minute.
It's okay. We have droughts. It's all good. No. How dare you? We're in the middle of a pandemic. Why aren't you publishing like
working at a literary festival for
yeah. One of the things we'll mention about this is that you do absolutely have to develop a thick skin. I submit so frequently that I want to say not 3 or 4 days will pass before I get yet another rejection from a lit mag where I, hoped against hope that it would find a place. I've gotten to the point in my life where once I get a rejection, it just slides off me like oil off of water. It's just something you take in and you go, oh, okay, all right, I guess I should update my spreadsheet. That's the end of the thought, is I guess I should update my spreadsheet. Not sadness, not disappointment. It's just more like, oh, okay, all right. You should get to that spot of indifference. Don't be angry, don't be sad. If you are indifferent when you see a rejection, you're doing it well. Also,
are you ever indifferent, Barrett? Indifferent?
I would say it more like, meh, meh, just something to slide off the shoulders, I guess. Do you all have, let me ask you this, do you all have submission tiers? What you say like, all right, this is going to be round 1, best of the best, creme de la creme. And then I guess maybe, I'll kind of hide these out until round 2. Who are some of your submission, mags that would be in your first tier, the places where you typically send your stuff? Creme de la creme first round. What are your choice places that you typically send to once you have a beautiful manuscript ready to rock and roll? Heather, let's start with you. How about that?
I think, I always send something to the Paris Review. I'm determined someday I'll get into the Paris Review, and I think we all have those, right? The New Yorker. But I would also say that my tiers and the way that I think my tiers, the tiers has really changed in the last few years, because I think there used to be very much the attitude, for example, that print publications were far more prestigious than online publications. And I think to an extent that's, in some cases, that's still true, but I think that online publications are really rising in esteem and getting a lot of new attention. And sometimes it's really exciting, equally exciting, to find or to get picked up by a newer online publication that is affiliated with someone that you really like, or to get published in a smaller publication that has published someone that you really like before. So I'm starting to more come around to that approach.
And PS, the online, more people will read you.
Yes, you get more exposure, and you know, more what's that thing called that we do? Networking, right?
Yeah.
You share your work, the journal shares your work, other writers share your work, and things spread, and word of mouth spreads for the journal, for the writer, for the other writers, for the editors. But you know, there are always those ones that are at the very top that we continue to hope for and strive for. Paris Review is mine.
Kathy, how about you? Who are your white whales?
Actually, you're reminding me, I think I dropped Paris Review off my spreadsheet.
What?
But yes, that would be a top tier. Georgia Review, New Yorker. I always, when I'm feeling really amazing about it, the problem is I feel amazing about a story after I've polished it for months and months and been through my writing groups, and I send it directly to the New Yorker. And after 25 rejections, I'm like, oh, I should have waited because I revised it and it's better now. So there's that. But I have, over the 15 plus years that I've been submitting, come to feel like I'm more interested in finding the right home for something versus it being in a top tier magazine. I mean, of course, if I still send to them, and if they accepted me, of course, I would say yes, of course. But there's also something really lovely when you have a connection with an editor at a smaller publication. They reach out to you in person. They give you very specific, friendly, like loving remarks about you. Feel like you have this bond that you might not have at a larger publication. So that's the trade-off.
Absolutely. Yeah, there'll be some things that you produce. The best, the best manuscripts sometimes are the ones that you have no idea what to do with at all. Like it's this beautiful piece of flash fiction maybe that you've never written before, but it just felt like it just came off of, slick and amazing and wonderful. And you know that someplace like, the Paris Review or the New Yorker or your top tier journals aren't going to take this, but you still want to find a home for it. And, Kathy, like you were just talking about a moment ago, when you have those spots that are, where you're sending something that where you're sending something into it that you think fits perfectly, you're in a really good spot. It's a good relationship. It's good. We're going to talk more about form rejections and positive rejections and personal rejections here in just a second. We're gonna show our asses actually here in just a moment too. Let's do this. We have several examples of what we mean by form rejections are rejections that are just the boilerplates that magazines send off. So let's look at a couple of those. Positive rejections are the ones that encourage you to submit again. They might have found something that they really like about your work. The best thing that you can ask for, obviously, aside from acceptances, are personalized rejections, where the editors have taken time out of their day to write to you and say, look, this particular piece wasn't right for us, but we would love to see more of your work, which is great. Let's look at several of these. This is one that I got. This is an example of a boilerplate, just form rejection, something that I sent to the Florida Review for a piece called Spaz. It's a nonfiction piece. This is a blanket statement from them. It doesn't encourage anything, but again, rejections just should fly off of you. We appreciate your interest in the Florida Review and the chance to read your work. Unfortunately, the submission is not suited to the current needs of our magazine. It's not basically telling you to piss off. It's just saying, this isn't right for us. Meh. That's okay. That's all right. Let's look at the next one here really quickly. All right. So Kathy, this is yours, for example. Would you poke it apart?
All right, I muted myself. Yes, let's see. So I knew this was not a form rejection because it says we found much to admire in this fine work.
That's right. Yeah, it's not a form.
Nonetheless, this is like the level 2 rejection. So it's a nice rejection, but it's not a really nice rejection. They're also, because they're encouraging me to send work again. I know that they read it and liked it enough to, they just were like, this story itself wasn't great, but we might like to see what we like your writing and your subject matter, send something else.
Perfect. We have another one. Heather, this is yours from Waxwing. That's right. Oh, this is an example of a positive one. Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, I think this one was like a positive, like Kathy just said, like a level 2, like positive. Thanks for submitting your poems to Waxwing and trusting us with your work. We don't take the responsibility lightly. Please know we found much to admire in your work and hope that you'll send us more to read in the future. So when you see that invitation to submit again, that's really exciting. And P.S., you should always absolutely do that immediately as soon as you can. Submit again and mention their invitation to submit again in your cover letter.
Absolutely. Editors will create these tiered systems of rejections as well. They have the boilerplates, they have positives, and then if they take time out to do personalized, that thing is going to find a home. Yeah.
Good.
Oh, Heather, going back to you, this is an example of a personalized rejection. Yeah. What is that? What does it do for your soul, for your self-esteem when you get one of these things in?
Well, this is I don't think it's quite the best personalized rejection, but this was one where they pointed out that they really liked one of the poems especially, and, you know, invited me to submit again. So that told me like, oh, somebody actually read my work and they talked about it. So it got actual consideration, and that's significant. I think from the editing side, when you actually talk about a piece, that's a good thing.
Same situation with Kathy. They took time to be able to to personalize this note a little bit more.
They said I was talented.
So you were talented. I know, right?
You are.
And then for places that will send you something like what Kathy got from the Missouri Review, which is one of these top tier white whale journals, the fact that they would put pen to paper, stick it in the mail, and spend a stamp on her. This is awesome. This is the best. You know that work is going to find a home.
I mean, this is from 2009.
but still, yeah.
It's amazing. Those were good times.
Those are good times, yeah.
The handwritten letter, but.
Oh, it's perfect. If an editor spends more than 5 seconds on you, that is love right there. That is absolute love. I have to say that. Any investment from them, it is pure joy. Those are examples of just form and positive and personalized rejections. Now let's talk a little bit about acceptances. I can say so. I got something accepted this week from the Saturday Evening Post. I'll give you an example of what that line. Oh, thank you. I thought I'd use it just because it's fresh. This Saturday Evening Post is an example of a site that pays for its work. They have an ongoing online fiction series. It's only $25 a pop, but it's money. It's a paying market. And I am a mercenary / whore, and I will take it. So this is an example of just a boilerplate. They'll send you something standard, something along the lines of, well, with a contract too. Just quickly, rights. Let's do rights. Let's do this as also magazine editors too. Gang, what do you all ask for your respective magazines when it comes to an acceptance and publication? What do you ask for your authors when it comes to this?
First, serial rights.
Right.
That's it.
So that just means that if the piece appears in any other publication or in a book, the author will acknowledge that it first appeared in our magazine.
And this goes to Nikki's question right now on chat. Most magazines have they limit it to. They limit your acceptances for pieces because they've never been published before, and that includes on blogs as well. They consider if it's been published on a blog to be published.
I think consider if you publish it on your own website. It cannot be published online. Anywhere.
Right. It can't be anywhere else. Right. Hold on just a moment. Yes. Okay, let me see here really quickly. Gang, I'm going to hop off camera for just a second while we move over here. So we're at about that spot where we want to get any and all questions that you have from the audience on anything regarding the submission process. Magazines are questions as editors, readers, anything along those lines. Please put us to work. Actually, I'm sorry, really quickly. I thought we were getting to Q&A. Let's talk quickly about contests, anthologies, agents, and I think we had mentioned simultaneous submissions versus exclusives just a moment ago. Kathy and Heather, have you all submitted to contests and anthologies?
I have, but I tend to do it sparingly because usually you have to pay to submit to contests, and those can get a little bit pricey. They're more expensive than submitting to journals. I mostly submit to contests for larger, like book manuscript contests, and occasionally to anthologies. But I focus mostly on lit mags.
Yeah, I do about 20% to contests. I'm more careful about which contests I submit to. And, contests can cost anywhere from $10 to $30 a pop. And that's a lot of money. Yeah. And, the idea is like, well, if I submit, I spend $200, maybe not even that much, $150 submitting to contests, and I win $1,000. Well, that's not so bad. But I've only once won a contest. So in all the years that I submitted to contests, I don't think I've come out any better. I'm curious what you all think. I remember when we were at Harper Pallet, Barrett, it felt like submitting to a contest was a better gamble because there were fewer entries, right? So you're not up against as many people. But I guess also the downside is that you're up against higher quality ? I don't know. I feel like I haven't figured it out. But
I don't know if it would be higher quality, but you're definitely up against fewer people in the submission pool. I remember that, especially from Harper Pallet, just because, obviously there was, a ticket price to get into the door. And so there were fewer people in there, but I don't remember the quality of the submissions being any better.
Yeah.
So that's one reason why, like, having had that knowledge of working on the other end of contests, I think that's why I submit to contests sometimes. Yeah. So if I've got a really sexy piece, like I just put that in there, like, yeah, you're looking good today. I'm going to send that off to a contest. It's not, I obviously don't do that with every submission. That would get prohibitively expensive. But yeah, the ones that I have a lot of faith in, the ones that I've put in a lot of work that I really love, I might send my baby out onto the dance floor. Who knows? Yeah.
Depends on the contest judges too.
Yeah.
You want to look at, like for poetry, for example, who's the poet that's judging the contest, because a lot of places will do contests that say, special guest judge so-and-so. And so, you can get a sense of that judge's work and what they tend to like, and get a sense of, do I have a shot at this contest, or is my work not really going to be what this judge is looking for?
Yeah, so it might take a little more research to figure out whether you want to put your money out there.
Right.
Please know that for most of the journals, though, that contest fee is going to their operational costs. They're not getting rich.
Yeah, it's actually an important thing to say, that like these fees are not because the journals are trying to gouge you, like they're just trying to stay alive. So we're sort of trashing them, but they are necessary. So
yeah.
Rachel in chat asks if there's anything that writers should look out for as it relates to rights and granting permissions and things like that. Honestly, for the most part, I haven't seen anything that exclusively grants them the right to publish it, and that they won't allow you to have those rights reverted if you want to put it in a book, or if you want to send it off for a larger manuscript. Have you all seen anything that's just been incredibly dangerous and irresponsible out there?
No, and you'll always be sent something. Even, we do it via email, but just, like saying yes means that you agree to X, Y, and Z. So just make sure that you read it. But the standard is for serial rights. That's basically it.
Yeah, once it's published, the rights revert to you.
Yeah.
The beauty of first North American serial rights. Yeah. Okay. I've responded to a couple of people in audience. Regarding agents, this is something that comes up specifically in a lot of Q&As, so we thought we might head this off. Flat out, you do not need an agent at all in any way, shape, or form when it comes to literary magazines. Most editors are wanting to find those new, fresh, awesome, kick-ass voices, and that doesn't come largely from having agents sent off your work. I've had friends who did hire agents in order to be able to send off to magazines. This was in like I want to say right around 2010 that I heard of several friends doing this, but the agent was just doing the work that they could do on their own when it came to submitting their stuff to various lit mags. You do not need an agent. I think I don't want to speak for both Kathy and Heather though. Do you have agents right now when it comes to sending out your work to lit mags?
No,
Yeah.
I think of agents as more for books.
Right.
If I want to sell a book, but for short stories, poems, essays, you don't need it. You don't need an agent. You might get an agent for a book, and then they also provide the service of sending your work out to literary magazines. But for for lit mags or magazines where you're doing short pieces, no. I don't think there's a benefit to it. You're paying, yeah, no.
Heather, how about you?
Same. Sorry, I'm just shaking my head. No, there's
Okay.
no need for an agent. There's no need to spend time looking for an agent at this point. I think part of the benefit of submitting to literary magazines is to get your name out there, to maybe build toward when you have a book that you want to try and sell and get out there. And even for that, you don't need an agent because there are open reading periods and other ways of going about that. But definitely for submitting to literary magazines, it's not only not necessary, but I don't even think it's the norm or a standard practice at all. So I could be wrong about that, but
I've seen it as an editor where an agent will say, hey, we're submitting this work on behalf of this author. And I'm expecting something magical and, amazing. And when I don't see that, being at the same level as something that I might pull from the slush pile, I just think, oh, what a waste. You didn't need to hire this, you didn't need to hire an agent for that.
That made me think of something, Barrett, that I don't know if we've talked about that seems super important for people who are new to this.
Right.
The reading of people's work is extremely subjective.
Right.
Again, so don't be disheartened by rejections for that reason. There's been things where, and it depends, all journals are different, but there'll be your work might get in front of an editor who just doesn't like that subject matter and can't focus to read the rest because they're like, I don't really like dogs. And this story is about dogs. So know that some of it is you can either see it as negative or positive. Like some of it is literally luck. Like your work got in front of the right person at the right time of the day. And that's where, from my perspective, I err on the side of sending out more than less, right? Like I want to have, it's a bit of a shotgun approach. And if you don't want to spend money doing it, then you can find other journals where you don't have to pay to submit. You cater your submission based on what your situation is and what you want to get out of it. But I do think that sending out more than less is better because of the fact that you might just get in front of an editor who's super tired that day and you have no control over that. So I want to send that positivity. Hopefully it comes across as positivity into the universe for people who are new at this, and to really try to compartmentalize yourself. Like, I'm a writer today, I'm writing my stories, my poems, and I'm being creative. And then tomorrow I'm going to be a business person and I'm going to write cover letters and send this out into the universe and try not to think of it as my baby, even though it is.
Yeah, I think that's an important point to make too, that it's part of the work, submitting. And so also if you're getting rejections, even the form rejections, they're proof that you're doing the work. So you're getting it out there. But I always submit in rounds. So I'll sit down and say, okay, I have this batch of poems, for example, I'm going to send it to 10 journals today, and I'll have my list and I'll send it out. And it's part of doing the work that you have to sort of set aside the time to do. And I would also recommend sending out your work to more places to just, get it out there and get more chances for it to be read and to be.
Yeah. That being said, I would make sure you're sending to places like that if you get accepted, you would be willing to publish in, because there's nothing worse than having someone, I don't think this has happened to me that many times, but accepting someone and having them be like, well, I got it out at this other place still, I'm waiting to hear from them.
No, don't do that.
Don't do that. That's bad form.
If you get accepted, like you've submitted, they think that you want to be there, you say yes, and you don't like negotiate. It's not about negotiating.
Right.
There has been a couple times where someone submitted, I think you mentioned this, Heather, and that like they've submitted, and since they've submitted, because it took 7 months for us to read it and accept it, like I've revised it, and people have said, hey, I've revised this and I actually like this version better. Please, would you consider this revision? This actually just happened in our last issue of Anomaly, and we read it, and we get to decide whether we like the piece that we loved and we accept it, or whether we're willing to like take the new piece, and we did in that case. But so those are the kind of things that can happen. And it's not every time, but it's worthwhile if you really do love that revision that you did, to say, hey, basically just respectful, like, hey, I have a revision, I like it better, please consider it. If you like the original, that's fine, but please consider this, kind of thing. It's all about being reasonable.
We've got a couple of questions coming in from chat right now, so we're gonna actually turn this over to full Q&A if we can. Yael, you just said, you asked, what's the slush pile? Is it different from anything that's submitted unsolicited? Speaking as editors, no, the slush pile is just the stuff that comes in. In terms of, I don't want to say this is the same thing for every magazine, but honestly, the slush pile is, editors tend to read quickly through the slush pile first round. They maybe look at, if you're doing a longer piece, like say a short story or an essay, they might look at just the first couple of pages of it to see if it's ready to go on to the next round. Short poems, same thing. So honestly, first round from the slush pile, I want to say anywhere about like say 60 to 80% gets skimmed off of the slush pile pretty quickly. And that's where a lot of form rejections come from. Editors have got to fly fast, back and forth to get stuff out that they know that they're not going to find a good home for in the magazine. But yeah, no, that's submitting unsolicited. Yeah, that you wind up in the slush pile. But that's where most places accept their work from. So that's good. We have another question from Mary about timing. If you have something that's season themed, do journals work 6 months in advance or longer? A lot of them honestly will wait to publish if they find something that they love, and if it's season themed and they want to wait until it comes out for another issue, they might wait for 2 issues from now instead of just the next upcoming issue. A lot of places will do that. With Anomaly and Hoxie Gorge, do you both use, do you find like seasonally themed issues, or I forgot, do you do themed issues at this point?
We do. Hoxie Gorge does not do themed issues.
We do folios, which are different. So fiction, it's just fiction. And there might be fiction, like a multi-genre stuff that comes in for the folios, which are thematic. So like I said, there was a Romany folio. There's sometimes a translation folio. And that's something where you need to go check the website and see if there's a call for a specific theme. I have seen season themed. I can't remember specifically which journals. Again, that's where you just, every now and then I go to your list and go to their website and see what their calls are and see if there's something that fits, or go to your hard copy of Poets and Writers and you'll see it in their back and you'll circle it and you'll, like the olden days, and you'll submit. I think if it's season themed and you're just cold submitting like to a general publication, then it's fine. Like that, if they want it to be seasonal, they'll fit it into the right season, because they're almost all of them are reading 6 to 9 months out, maybe even longer right now. Like the number of journals that are on hiatus or like suspended right now, because a lot of them are volunteer run and everyone's just trying to like keep their shit together. So yeah, it's a good question. I would say just check the websites and see.
We have a question from Amanda regarding, do we know of any offhand places to submit children's literature to? Oh, thank you very much, by the way, for the compliment. Some lit mags, for the most part, lit mags are themed toward adult readers, but there are some cool places like One Story One Story is a great mag. They do a special sister journal called, I think, One Teen Story, and they accept, specifically YA lit. Some publications do, most publications don't, just because, I don't know why, short stories and essays and children's poems for the most part don't come in through general calls for papers or calls for submissions. But it's worth, if you have a lot to send out, I would say that it might be worth, investing in a place like Duotrope to find out where to send these types of manuscripts, for children's literature. Kathy, Heather, have either of you seen any of this?
I know that there are resources for this. It's just not my area of expertise. And I know, like, at Spring Rights, we've had a panel on this before. So I'm like, want to connect you with the panelists that were on that panel from last year. Robin, help me out. But like, I know that there are trade publications. So maybe we can provide that after I do a little research. But off the top of my head, because it's not at the forefront of my submissions, I don't know. How about you, Heather?
I can't really call anything up either.
Gotcha. Other questions? Anything that is just off the top of your heads for, oh wait, sorry, there was another question. I'm sorry about that. From Mary. Mary asked, how much of their editing should we accept? What if we don't like the changes that they request? This is a great question, just because editors will sometimes come back with revision suggestions that just rankle you hard. Kathy, Heather, what would you say about your individual pieces and also having worked as, working as editors now?
So I've had poems be accepted with the condition of, or, like, we love this, but would you consider changing the last line or losing the last line, or, making an edit here. And I've sort of responded in both ways. Most of the time, I'm just so excited for a publication that I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever you think, I'm gonna do it.
Like the Paris Review.
Right.
Yeah, well, yeah, whatever you tell me to do, I'm gonna do. But and I've also had moments where I've thought, oh, you know what, that's actually a really important point. And I also had a story published where they came back to me and suggested that I make a change in order to clarify something about the narration. And I felt very strongly that the whole point of the story was about the ambiguous narration. And I said as much, and I'd gotten rejected for this story like so many times. And I thought, oh no, like, I was really excited. It was the Los Angeles Review, and I thought they're not gonna take it. And so I responded and said, I hope you'll still consider it. I feel really strongly about keeping it the way that it is. And there were two editors, and the other editor wrote back and said, nope, I totally agree with you. Basically like, I was trying to tell you that that's what she was going for. So anyway, I think that you can stick to your guns when you want to. I know that as an editor, we have sent, I think maybe just once or twice, a suggestion like, we love this poem and we're happy to publish it as it is, but would you consider, taking this line out or removing this from your title because we feel like it gives too much away. And in both of those cases, the writers agreed, but we also preface that by saying that we'd publish it either way. So I think it's like personal preference, how strongly you feel and how much you want to be published in that publication. For me.
Yeah, I agree. I would trust your gut. And some people don't have that feeling, like they don't trust their gut or they don't feel that gut feeling. But the very first publication I had, I won't name any names, but they changed, they said they would publish the story if, and then their recommended changed the ending. Like it changed the ending to the story. Like they rewrote it. And I was new and was just like, I want a publication. And I said, okay. And I, to this day, feel yucky about it. So let that be a lesson, or if you're okay with that, that's fine. But in my gut, I was like, no, that's not what I'm going for. And I let my desire to be published overshadow that. So as from an editorial perspective, I don't ever personally, with my co-editors, recommend changes unless I'm willing to like say, like, I'm not gonna I personally, I don't think I would say, okay, now I'm not going to publish it because you won't make these changes. I just want to say, I think these changes would be improve it. And here's why, here's my reasoning. Let's open a conversation about this. But I don't think I would offer the publication with the idea of like, okay, well, if you don't agree to what I'm saying, then I won't publish this. So it's got to be pretty far along for me to make those suggested changes.
Personally, I've had some really good relationships with editors who have been able to find something about like the essays or the stories that I send in. And when they make revision suggestions, for the most part, they're good suggestions and they make the story stronger.
Yes.
There have been some ones, where I've accepted their revisions and I'm thinking in the back of my head, screw you, I'm going to let you publish this, but I'm going to keep my changes for later on when I want to put this in, when I want to put this in the collection or something. But
and it's okay to do that. I have revised so many things that have been published, and if they appear in a book, they're going to be different than they appeared in the original publication, and I think it's totally fine to do that.
Oh yeah. We've got just time, I think, for one more question, if anybody has anything. While anyone's getting ready to type anything, if anything, if you'd like for us to be able to send you a copy of the Prezi tonight, or of a copy of Lynn Barrett's What Editors Want, or if you just like anything from tonight, just send us your email address over here in the chat. Robin has been awesomely gracious enough to save the chat for us and distribute those emails to us to send anything your way if you'd like. Yeah, while we're waiting for any final questions or anything, Kathy, Heather, any final thoughts, words of encouragement, warnings, dire warnings?
No, I just think you have to start to send it out. If you're nervous about it, you have to just start it.
Good
Yeah,
call.
once you're doing it, it's not that scary because it's actually sort of like a faithless process, you can send it out there, and it's less scary for me to submit my work than it is to send it to my readers and get their responses, because
Yes.
you just sort of, well, whatever's going to happen is going to happen, and I'll get a form rejection or I'll get something else. But
oh, I will say that the season for rejection is unfortunately in December.
and sometimes does this happen to you guys? You get them in like rounds, like Submittable does something and suddenly you get just a couple of rejections every day for a week, and you're like, oh, I feel really great about myself.
I feel really dark in just the first couple weeks in December. And then I start reading all of the writing guides by like Stephen King and like all the people who are like, they're very comforting, because then you find out how many times they were rejected. Like you just need to go to your people when that starts to happen. Bird by Bird.
Bird by Bird is a great one. Yep.
Bird is great.
That's great. Well, gang, we are going to wrap up right now. We so appreciate you all coming and, sitting with us during this, panel. And I want to thank Robin one more time. Let's give her a huge round of applause for putting this together. And yeah, sorry, Kathy, what did you say?
You should go to all the other panels.
Yes, go to the panels. Yes, please.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Yep.
So Barrett, why don't you turn off the screen share?
Absolutely.
And I'll just say thank you to everybody for coming. This was so much fun, wasn't it? I can't believe how much of what you said was exactly like my grant writing workshops.
Oh.
There's so much of it that's exactly the same. I have a deadline for a grant at midnight tonight, and I'm just starting to see all the applications coming in through email, but they're not, they got hours until the deadline. But for magazines, are there deadlines generally, or is it year round?
Most places have set reading periods, and you can find those by going to their
yeah. So probably everything is slightly different.
Well, contests have deadlines.
What?
Contests have deadlines.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. Hey, check out springwrites.org, everybody, and go to some other events. I will be right here in the bedroom. What's today? Thursday? Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday, and then next Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We'll be here again with a bunch of other wonderful panels and readings and presentations, and then workshops.
Heather, are you doing a reading?
I am not doing a reading. Are you doing a reading?
No.
Aren't you part of another reading?
Me? No,
Yeah.
no. I decided to be low key this year.
I should know this. All right, if anyone wants to just stay and chat and have a party, that would be fine.
Thank you, Barrett.
Thank
No.
you. I'll see you
Kathy,
on
Heather, thank you so much. It's good seeing you all and working with you all. Thank you everyone for coming and sitting in with us tonight. We so appreciate this. Thank you.
Yes, thanks. I
Okay.
think this is really fun.
I want to kiss you guys.
I know, darn pandemic.
I put lipstick on for you.
There was
Address- Go ahead, sorry, Robin. What was I?
Months.
Does anyone go to Ithaca Foreign Car? Because they've got inside their lobby, they've got this really beautiful vintage sports car, and there's a sign on it that says, "Please resist the urge to touch me." I want that T-shirt.
That's a
I
good
want
t-shirt.
that as a T-shirt.
Well, gang, I'm going to go toss off to make certain that some small children go to bed. Thank you all so freaking much for being here. I so appreciate it.
For
Thank
organizing and being
Thank
the host.
And for everyone who sent email addresses, I will get, Robin's going to send that to me, and I'm going to get you the information ASAP. Thank you all so much. I'm going to bow out. Mwah! Bye, gang. Thank you.
I'll send this to you tomorrow, Barrett.
You're awesome, Robin. Thank you.
Okay.
Robin, do you remember who the children's literature person was from last year? I thought she did a.
You want me to remember something from last year?
No, I'll look it up, but I felt bad that I couldn't remember that.
No, and actually the record I have from last year is I saved the programs, which are at the office.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I would have
Yeah,
to like,
I'll look it up and see.
go over there and find them.
I know that, I mean, this was specifically literary work, and there's so many
Yeah.
other genres that can be, have their own process. I mean, it's similar, but they have their own resources.
Yeah, maybe next year. Maybe what I'll do is after this is over, I'll email all the participants and the audiences and ask for suggestions for
Yeah.
things that they might like to have next year or hear next year.
Yeah.
But anything having to do with publishing is usually
Yeah.
very, very, very popular.
Yeah.
So
Well, thank you, Heather.
thank you, Heather.
Nice to see you.
Yeah, it was so nice to see you too. Thank you, Robin. I think the Zoom form was great. I'm glad that maybe we'll keep it as part of the.
I like it. Yeah. Yeah, Kathy and I were chatting earlier. I mean, I like the idea of a mix,
Yeah,
or maybe filming.
possible for more people, and
Yeah.
nice too. So
Yeah, it's nice that it can expand like exposure to. I mean, how many festivals do you know that are free, Heather?
Oh yeah, yeah.
That are not. I should say that are not affiliated with a university or college.
right, yeah,
Or
Right.
maybe we
Like
could have
the community is invited to.
yeah.
I mean, they're always invited to, so like seminars at Cornell and stuff, like they're open to anybody, but it doesn't feel like it's open to everybody somehow.
I hear what you mean, yeah.
So
right. It feels exclusive. And the other thing about Zoom is, you don't have to put on makeup or get dressed, or you could just be all cozy in your bed and nobody knows.
well, yes, I guess you don't have your camera on.
Yeah, but not you.
I have my hat on.
Not you. Not the people speaking.
Yes.
I have this bad habit of doing this where I shift in my chair and it looks like this, while I'm talking. Like I'll do that. Well, I will do that throughout Zoom events, and I see it on the tape and I'm like, what am I doing? Maybe we could do like let's say that next year, if we could all be in the same room, I could be taping this on Zoom. So I could be sitting there on Zoom and be taking questions and reading the questions to the people who are live. It could be a combination of the two.
Mhm.
Might be nice, because I can't wait to go to the registration list and see how many people are in from out of town, because I was asking for zip codes
Mhm.
or different states. So we'll get to see how many people were able to come, even from different time zones.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, it was really great.
Cool.
I had a friend in Germany who wanted to do this, but she would have to stay up till like 3 in
Yeah.
the morning or something.
Well, my friend Roz on my writing group, I don't think she's on here anymore, but she's in California.
Yeah, so she's earlier.
Yeah. So that's not as hard, but
Not as hard as 3 in the morning.
no.
Yeah.
But how dedicated are you?
No, I like this technology very, very much. And I mean, just the fact that we had so many more people on these calls than we ever had live is a good thing. And I don't have to sell buttons. So, all right, I'm going to go watch Hercule Poirot on Amazon Prime.
Okay.
Agatha Christie's Poirot. It's getting very depressing. Have you not watched
No.
Poirot? Have you watched any British murder mysteries?
No.
I love British murder mysteries. They do them the best.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're the best ones.
Yeah.
So I definitely have to check that out.
I'll send you a
Send
trailer.
the link, Robin. I
What?
don't have a lot of time to watch some shows.
Yeah.
When I should be writing.
There's actually a TV show I was watching called Speechless, and it's a oh, what's her name? Actor. It's about it is a sitcom, but it's really good. Mother of a child with cerebral palsy in a wheelchair and 2 other kids, and it's an actor. Minnie Driver.
Oh yeah.
Minnie Driver, and it's really good. The panel before were you here for the Motherhood is a Joke
Yes.
panel? Yeah, I thought they might like it. Okay, I'm starting to babble, so I'm going to sign
We'll
off.
chat another time.
We'll chat another time.
Thank you,
Okay.
Heather.
Bye, Heather. Bye, everyone else on the call.
Bye,
See you
everybody.
Monday.
Thank you. Have a
Bye.
good night.